it was not at all special anymore to other people, and also to us a bit. It lost the interest.
Yeah, because you're hipsters. And
Exactly.
And once something becomes cool, it's like,
exactly.
no, I'm not going to do this anymore.
It was like I was in ChatGPT before ChatGPT. Of course.
Welcome to Guy's Trip.
Hi.
A podcast of the artists, by the artists, and for the artists. Today we have with us a composer, media artist,
human,
dog person who lives with a cat,
yes.
And a tinkerer of things.
Yes.
You do tinker with things.
I do.
Herr Severin Dornier.
Hi, I'm super happy to be on Guide's Trip.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So, before we start, let's set the ground rules, how this thing works. The rules, yes.
Okay.
So we're interviewing each other.
Yes.
I ask you 5 questions, you ask me 5 questions.
Yes.
And in total, we'll have 10 questions.
Math.
Some ground rules. You may reject any question that makes you uncomfortable, but I may not reject.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I did not know this before thinking about my questions. Good for you.
You can decide who goes first.
Oh, okay.
This also means who goes last, because if you ask first, I ask last. Math.
Yes. Logic. Okay. Nice.
Yes. Each question can lead to a discussion of up to 10 minutes. I'm not sitting here with a stopwatch, of course, but but the idea is that the questions are just we just use them to make up interesting conversations. Most of the time, we forget what the question was, but by the end of the of the discussion, at the end of each question, we make a toast with the delicious whiskey.
Nice.
We have.
At the end of the question or at the end of the answer?
Of the answer, of course. At the end of the skit.
Yes.
Very, very important clarification here. You're a person who likes to makes everything very, very precise. And another rule that is very important: if we mention anyone we know personally, we shouldn't mention them negatively. So if we want to mention anyone negatively that we know, we just wrap it with a person from a place that I might or might not know.
A planet.
A planet, exactly.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Good. So who should go first?
I feel now my questions are way too harmless.
I mean, you can, of course, you can decide on new questions during the thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
I start with a super basic, very simple, music-focused question. Somehow my questions were very music-focused.
So you go first.
I go first.
Good.
I go first. Because now that I was thinking, because you were traveling. I mean, you're still traveling.
Yes.
My question is very simple. So if you could choose any country to go to, but only for their, I think you can, only for their music scene.
Ooh.
Or let's say it could also maybe be art scene in general, but especially music scene.
Yeah.
And you go there to go to concerts or meet people to play music. What comes first to mind? Which country?
Probably Japan.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
okay, I see.
I mean, you told me that you were
Yes.
recently in Japan, so
Yes.
I would be interested in like if my image of Japan is what
I
I
see.
think it
I
is,
see.
but like it seems there's like a lot of cool things going on there, like a lot of different scenes in different cities, a lot of like extremely talented people, and a lot of very passionate fans actually.
Yes,
Which
definitely,
like populate
definitely.
these scenes and make them feel alive. And I just like I have like a big obsession with Japanese pop.
Yes, I should have
Yeah,
seen this coming. Actually, I
yeah.
was not realizing that it's a very obvious answer somehow. I was thinking first of like, maybe somewhere in Europe, and I was like, no, of course not. Yeah, nice. Okay, yeah, this makes sense. I mean, I'm listening to a lot of Japanese stuff right now.
Mhm.
I I mean, I was not in a concert
Mhm.
when during the time in Japan, but actually, funny enough, my mom and my brother who were there with me, they went to a concert the first evening when they arrived.
Uh-huh.
I just didn't have tickets for that one, which was apparently very interesting concert. I would have loved to see that. It was like three, I believe, transgender people, but from
Interesting.
quite like having their band since the 70s
Uh-huh.
or something like that, like quite veterans
Yeah.
of the scene.
Uh-huh.
And the music, I listened to some stuff on YouTube, is incredibly kitschy in a way, but in an entertaining way.
Yeah, I mean they love kitsch in Japan.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of the version, I don't know, we have Schlager in Germany.
Yeah.
So it feels a bit like that in Japanese, but totally surreal and crazy. And also their stage behaviors.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because, of course, my mom would not go to like such a weird concert because it's very like just the videos look very like surreal, psychedelic. And even she was saying, "Oh, but it sounds so kitschy." But a friend of hers kind of dragged them with her, so they sounded super fun, and I would have loved to go there. And because it was also in a very small location somewhere in Tokyo.
Ah, cool.
So very cool. But it's very hard to plan the whole holiday and then also schedule, like find the concerts that are exactly in the place where you want to go.
Yeah.
So it was a bit difficult, but
yeah, I mean, if I would probably travel to Japan for music, I would probably go to one of these like big festivals.
Yeah,
like
that
there's
makes sense.
the Fuji Festival,
Yeah,
like which
of
is
course.
insane, and it's
Of
always like
course.
the best bands that are currently popular. It's,
Of course.
it's amazing.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, but I do listen to a lot of Japanese music, I think. So okay. That makes sense. Nice. I hope I can go there again and listen to some concerts next time live.
So you
And
were
I hope
mainly
you can-
traveling when you were there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I hope you can go there. too.
Yeah, I hope so. The problem is that it's so far that I feel that like if I go there, it needs to be like for a long trip.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Of
it
course.
doesn't feel like worth it, which is
No, of course.
mainly a psychological thing because I think even going for like 1 week to Tokyo will be amazing
It's
on
still,
of
it's still
itself.
cool. It's still cool. I do think though, for me, it was the first time flying so far, or like just so long, I think.
Yeah,
And I do think it's quite intense.
yeah.
But yeah, I thought Tokyo was super cool and super fun, and I wanted to spend more time in Tokyo actually. And we traveled around a lot, also to all the like very touristic traditional places like Kyoto and Nara and all that stuff. And we came back to Tokyo and went again, and so I was in Tokyo like multiple times during the whole trip, but never like really long.
Yeah.
So definitely something that is very, very cool in Japan. Just hanging out there, going to concerts and stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. That was already the quick, direct answer.
Yeah. So now we drink.
Yes.
To Japan.
Yes. I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll ask you the first question I ask every one of my guests.
Oh.
How are you doing these days?
Oh. I'm doing good right now. I feel I'm not ready for the winter yet.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. I'm doing very good. I feel I had a I did a lot of concerts and things like last year, and this year was a bit more chill, which was good. So I feel quite rested. I had this amazing trip to Japan. I was just in the summer, I had more actual holiday and not working during the summer all the time. And spent quite a lot of time here in Bern. So very, very chill, very rested. But then slowly it gets boring, so I need to do some new stuff. So it's very good. Like I had the year before, I had the phase of like just doing a lot of stuff and not having a break to like not even think, but also to just chill down a bit and take not also everything crazy serious, because you get into this mindset of like, I need to do the next project and this, and it gets can get very like you get very serious about it, which is good.
Yes.
But so now I had this nice period of like
being able to think.
What
you actually want to do. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think I do think a lot, but it's more in the back of my mind. I think I do need the more practical. You know, either it's because there's a project I need to do something, or because there's some people asking me to do something, or because I am in a nice place to do something. I do need the practical thing. Like for me, also becomes at some point quite counterproductive if I just have time to think.
So a more intense environment is more productive for you.
It is more productive.
Interesting.
But it is more productive. I realized this only, I think, also like the last couple of years.
Wow, interesting.
I do think so. But then there's always the point where it becomes too much. So
yeah, I guess it's a question of balance.
Yeah, exactly. So now I do feel I had these 2 quite different years. One very intense like this, just nonstop, and then one more like just a few projects, but a bit more time to rest, which is good. Now I feel a tiny bit I want to go back to the more intense one already. But it's also good just to have this more calm time to also realize like what is important for the stuff you do, but also what is important for like learning how to do stuff also better. I don't know, learn from your mistakes or learn from other people that you work with.
Yeah. So, I mean, soon you're going to have like a more intense period.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Like I'm going to Paris soon.
I go to Paris. And I mean, so this is the nice thing. I know that it will happen anyways.
Yeah.
Going to Paris, doing the program there where I will be every day in the studio, basically in the sound studio, which is not necessarily something I did before also. So it's very different, I think, for me. And this is the nice thing. So I know there's going to be this period. And then like the last couple of even months was like I did some smaller projects, but I was kind of waiting for this to start and for the move, and had just a more relaxed time here. And so it's exciting, but it's also challenging to think, okay, I have to really get back into the mindset of like, it's also just very different work environment, because I will really be in the studio every day.
Yeah.
So it's basically like it's a 9 to 18 job kind of thing, which is very different than how I worked before, because it was more like you have projects and you have rehearsals and it's all over the place, time-wise and stuff. So I think it will be a big change for me, but
interesting.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's really like a full-time job.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Without getting paid.
You get paid with fame and glory.
Exactly. Oh, maybe.
Interesting. Do you think you have any like sense this period is going to come to an end very soon? Do you feel you have like any insights since you had like actual time to like think a little bit?
Yeah, I think like I said, it's interesting. I think for the actual music that I want to do or projects I want to work on, I mean, of course, it's a very slow process. Of course, I'm rethinking stuff, but there I'm really more this. I realize I'm really more this practical person. I really need to just really compose the piece, and then I see, and then I will improve. For like the more, I think I had a lot of insights for like how I want to work and what is like what I want my like work environment to be and this kind of stuff. So less like practical. Okay, I want to write this piece.
Yeah.
Like this was not really happening in this year. This will happen when I go, for example, to Paris. Like I mean, of course, I have ideas, but I will work on it and it will happen. Now I think it was more helpful for me to just realize, okay, how do I want my work schedule to be like, and what do I want to focus on actually in the work, more in general. So more these general
but in a way,
things.
this is even more important.
Of course. No, this is very important.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're not sitting there and like, okay, I will write this piece like this and this. You're sitting there and you think like, okay, actually, for example, for me, I'm always now in this, have these, like, because I did projects that were very like composition based, very music based. I mean, music is always there, but like very, like working as a composer. And then I did projects where there was really very little less of being a composer, and it's more like being almost director, stage director, because they were more like theatrical projects, or being much more occupied with technical stuff, which I like a lot, which I love, and there's a lot of fun. But then it's more in these time periods, I think is good because you can kind of reevaluate what these things do I want to be more in the future, or like for the next year or whatever. What do I want to focus on? Because I always feel like I should also go back to the music because it's super fun. But then it's more of finding a balance of these things, especially if you are someone who likes to try a lot of different things, and also I'm also someone who probably also sometimes because getting bored of one thing and then really wants to learn a new thing, and I have a lot of fun learning really new stuff that I don't know about, which is super great. But then it's really important to have these periods of time of like, okay, I can actually also use this knowledge again to do something else. I don't need to just like shove it away and go to the next thing. Like there can also be a more steady growth of like, of course I love to always learn new stuff, but also I love to maybe build on some stuff. And this, the program Paris is really, really made for it, because you work, you have a lot studio time, and you work basically on a 15-minute composition maximum for over a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really...
So really like work there and like improve your craft and sharpen your skills.
Exactly. And I also know from them that they actually expect more of like, I think it's there, the project is there to like really improve what you're already doing, what you can already do, which is really nice. For me, right now, I think is a really good moment, because I feel I spend a lot of time of learning also new stuff, and it's great then to have this moment like, okay, now I really have the chance to really go deeper into one thing. Yeah, and then write a 15-minute piece over in a year, which is crazy.
This is amazing.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Very nice. I guess how are you doing these days? Good.
It's good. Yes.
That's good. Cool. So to
me. Or Paris, but
to Paris.
Okay. I don't know. Nice. Which question fits nicely now? I have a very practical question I was curious about. What is the most difficult thing in the process of like writing, like or like a book, like more practical? Like, of course, I'm sure there's like more. What is the thing that you didn't expect to be very difficult and it turned out to be difficult?
I think the most difficult thing is to actually like sit down and do the writing itself. Like I'll explain what I mean, because there are like different stages of work. Like the first stage is always the inspiration, right? Like know this from composition. It's actually not that different to music composition. So you have the inspiration, and then you start like sketching, right? Like you think of like, okay, I have these ideas. How do I like practically put them into like an actual thing? And then you start thinking about the structure and like what event would lead to another, etc., etc. But by the end of the project, you already know all the details. And then it's just a matter of like sitting down on your ass and doing the actual writing. So like the first 10 chapters of the book, for example, I wrote them in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But the last chapters, it's so hard because like you know exactly what you're going to write. You know exactly what's going to happen, but you need to like sit down on your ass and like just churn through it. Like it's not a creative process. There's no like inspiration going on. It's like a very like laborious process of just like putting the words on the page. So I would say this is the most challenging part of writing to me. Yeah.
And not so different than composing.
Yeah, it's
not
exactly
so different.
Yeah,
sounds very familiar.
Very familiar. Yeah.
I see. Okay, yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think. Do you also have this? Because for me, I have these more. Because I feel I'm really similar with composing, like writing scores, especially, or something that is more like, you just have to spend a lot of time doing, because it's just a lot of work. I don't know. It's just a lot of work that you need to do, even if you know what you want to do. Do you also have this thing of sometimes it comes super easy to me and I'm super in the mood and in the flow and I can do it forever also. Like if I would have time on the day, I can do it forever and I'm actually having fun. It's really nice. And then sometimes not at all. And I don't know, maybe sometimes it has to do with the material actually. Like maybe sometimes it's like, oh, this part actually, something is still not working 100% or something is weird about this part of the piece. So I'm struggling, but sometimes it's also maybe something totally different. And I never know why. But you also have these like very strong changes between, like sometimes it works so easily this part and sometimes not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's also sometimes it's just a matter of like letting go with writing, I feel, because sometimes I can sit for 30 minutes just searching for the one word that I need there. And what I learned that like helps me personally is actually to learn to like let go, because I have the full sentence. I just need this one word. Usually, like now what I'm doing, like I used to get stuck a lot. Now what I'm usually doing is that I put like a stamp word, like just like something temporary, so I could continue with the flow. Because otherwise you get stuck and then you might forget the next sentences that you already have in your head.
I see.
So this is very helpful for me to like just have these stubs throughout the writing. And then when I go through the editing phase, I'm like, okay, I know, like I mark this word with like a special marking. Like I know that this word needs to be replaced. And now that I have the full thing, it's much easier to sit down and think, what would work here. And usually you get the answer for this by actually continuing on the writing, because then you might find a different word later on that exactly like
makes sense suddenly. Yeah. I see. Yeah. I mean, this also, I wanted to follow up, like ask the follow-up question if you have some specific methods to help with it. I guess that is one. To just put placeholder kind of these things.
Yes.
Like some kind of methods that you put onto yourself, kind of things to help.
I mean, another method that really helps is to just like break it down. So like you have like, you always have the high level of like, okay, what this chapter or section is about, right? Like you can have like one sentence or a paragraph that like on a high level, like what this should serve or what should happen here. And so you have this, and then you can like break it down to scenes, and you can break down the scenes to actions without actually writing any of the actual text, right? You can say like, this character does this. This is one thing, and it doesn't require much effort, but it really helps because so usually what I do is like I start with like, okay, what this chapter is about, what are the scenes for the chapter, and then each scene I divide by like actions, what's happening, and then once I have it like break it down to like the smallest units possible, then I actually start writing, and then it gets really easy because then I know how to focus, because I have this one thing like atomic unit.
It's so smaller.
It can be translated into like 2 pages of text, right? But like you know what this unit is about, and you know what you need to focus on in order to convey it. And then it's also really easy that it's divided into these smaller parts, because if you get stuck on one of them, you can just skip to the next one, then go back to the one that you got stuck on.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. I think it might also be practical for music composition.
No, for sure,
I guess,
for sure.
Of course, it's very different, right? Because like music is it's like fixed in time, while text is not, right? Like at least traditional music.
Yeah, I mean, but this might be the same case. Like when you write I think the only issue that appears sometimes when you do this that is really hard to solve is when everything is dependent on every other thing.
Yes.
And this can happen, I think, in music a lot. Or also, yeah, I mean, this happened to me a lot in when I had I was writing the music, but I was also doing a video to the music or some staging, that like everything somehow depends on each thing, and it can become this knot that seems unsolvable because like you cannot solve the music when you don't know the staging yet.
Yeah.
And the staging depends on the video, but in the video there's maybe some technical thing with the music that you have to solve first, but you haven't solved the music. What do you want to do? Like this can get quite complicated. And I think still this method is already good for that, because of course it helps also with this, because you can just say, okay, but then I just don't need to solve everything now for this.
Yes. I mean, actually a really good tip I got from my editor. Shout out to Lou. If you actually, because like you said, there are things that are dependent on other things, and there are things that repeat. And this also happens with text. A really good helper document you can have is to have like some kind of a glossary of this, like, and this works also for music, right? If you have this like musical unit that always repeats, you can have it in like your glossary, and then you make sure that you always have it defined in one place, and then every time it repeats, you take it from there.
I see.
Then it makes it easy, because if you want to make any changes, it's very controlled. You make the change in like one place, and then all the other places are affected by it. And like you know where, if you map the text according to the glossary, then you know where these changes take effect, and like how it would affect your overall structure and composition, etc.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, this is nice. I think I mean, I do stuff similar, but I do things like that before I really start to write. Kind of have like lists and stuff, lists of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better to do it before you start.
Yeah, but then I was just thinking, like, maybe I should sometimes also go back and rework the lists, during the process,
definitely.
which maybe I could do more. I could think about this more often, because then I get sometimes lost in,
in the actual work.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the hardest thing. This is the same thing with writing, with writing code as well, to like document while you work. It's so challenging, because it's like, it's so obvious that this is the right way to work, but it's so unintuitive.
Because you don't want
because we're all lazy monkeys that just want the banana. So yeah, of course.
No. This is a good thought. No.
Yeah,
maybe I can apply this.
So to applying good tips.
Yes. This was my question, no? Was it?
Yes. But you see, we already forget.
Yeah, difficult.
So, I would like to ask. So, in the past few years, there have been like a lot of, I wouldn't say like technological developments, important technological development, but I think a lot of technology that was only in like a very specific nerdish realm has become like generally used, right? Like all these LLMs that we see these days, but not only this, like a lot of other like blockchain technology, and like a lot of different types of technologies that like used to be completely irrelevant for most people have become like very, very popular these days with the general public. And as someone who uses a lot of technology in his work, and you seem to be interested in, like, keeping up to date with like the latest technologies most of the time from the works I see from you. First of all, what are your thoughts of like these newest technological developments in the market, and do you see yourself like implementing some of them in your future work?
I see. That's super interesting because I had a very similar question. Yeah. So but first of all, I think I am. This is also something I realized the last couple of years. Like I'm really, it's totally true. Like I'm really interested in new technologies. Also, I think just in technology itself, and I'm also very interested in like physics, and stuff like that. So there is definitely this component, which for me somehow there's a relation there. Like I'm very interested in these fields outside of music, which I consider also technology to be in a way. It's like more this daily technology also, which I would not say necessarily like has to be like in music. You don't need to write a piece today and it has to have the needs to be like a TikTok piece or something like that, which is a problem that sometimes happens in like concerts and stuff that everyone feels like they need to do it.
That they need to communicate with the new trending thing.
Which I think is also can be a big problem, or can just be very just boring. But I think, I come from it really more in this. It's again a bit of more of a practical approach that like, well, some stuff I just think it's super cool. Like I told you earlier, like I was doing for example, some drone footage like videography with drones, which was not necessarily because I like it started out as like, okay, I want this shot. I know from like we always show like movies and stuff. I know I want this shot in this video for this piece. Should be a drone shot. Okay, how can we do that? And then technology is just like a tool getting the shot. But then it's for me a lot of times not like only like this, because I do really enjoy then this challenge of like, okay, how can we get a drone shot? How do you do this? And then most of the time, me or my friends that I work with have not enough money hiring someone do a professional drone shot for this.
So you need to learn how to operate
it yourself, and then you need to learn how to operate the drone, and then it becomes, if you're already a bit into that, it becomes super exciting because it's a really nice challenge. And then sometimes I do think I can also get a bit lost in there, and then I spend a lot of time learning how to really fly drone, how to shoot really well with the drone, and it's cool because it's good because then in the video there's a drone shot that maybe it's not as professional as you would get it from a professional, but then it's also like my take on that technology, so to say. And then I think this is really cool and important. So for me, there's like this very practical approach. So I'm never thinking like, oh, I don't think it happened ever that I was like, I really want to do a piece with this technology. It was more because of some other thing that was like clear, okay, for this I need this technology. And then I do get really into the thing, into the technical part of it. But it's not necessarily that I say like, okay, I really want to write a music piece now with AI or something like, with like a LLM. It's very funny. Like I have a story for this. I was working on a project already 2 years ago, together with a poet, a writer. We were just like brainstorming ideas, and I was quite at this point into. I was getting interested into the whole like large language models and stuff. And that was right before ChatGPT 3 got announced. So it was already very like known and of course very in the public, but not like this mainstream that everyone was using it all the time. It was kind of a thing like, okay, it's very well known, very well documented. There was like the model before ChatGPT 3 was like, I'm not sure how it was called. Like basically the model before was like open source already, and you could use it. And we did so. And the poet asked me like, or we somehow brainstormed this idea of she wanted to write letters to a machine, and the machine answering the letters, some kind of letter exchange with a machine or like a digital entity or whatever. And was like the brainstorming idea we came up with, and then we thought it was really nice because there was the whole history of writing letters and letter exchanges. There's all these letter exchanges from famous people that write between each other, and it was super exciting. And I was proud because I wrote this small, I I implemented the language model in like Max, and it was really cool. And I could like make the, I could have the also like a generated voice answer in real time, and it was really cool actually.
That's cool.
And I was quite, and then even I turned it into generative, because then we wanted to turn it into like song cycle. Like this was the end goal. And I managed even to have this really cool, I remember we had this rehearsal with our singer singing into the microphone, and then like my patch would respond with a generated voice singing in real time the answer, which was super cool.
Okay.
So we were really excited about this. There was a big challenge of how to put this into an actual piece, because because more of practical reasons, we wanted to present like a more normal, could be a staged piece, but not necessarily like an interactive thing or whatever. And it was quite difficult how to actually make the people understand this real time and not just like fake. It was a very practical, very stupid thing that like, how do you actually show the exciting part of the project?
Yes.
And not just make a super nice end result, because a super nice end result in theater, you can fake everything and it will be nice. Yeah. It's not like a bad thing, but like we were excited about our
just look at all the
process.
Apple demos.
Exactly. We were excited about the process, and it was difficult to put the process. There are ways to do it, but it was a bit difficult. And then it was so funny, because then we had like a presentation of, it was more of a work in progress a bit, but like what we worked on was very nice. And then ChatGPT was released, like the main version, like the 3.5 or the 3.0. That one that everyone used instantly. Yeah. And then I remember like a couple of months later, it was a bit frustrating, because suddenly it was super uninteresting to continue on this piece, because it was like kind of the thing. I mean, it's not that like everyone can do. I mean, of course, people did it before and can do it, but like it was still a special thing I think we created. But like it was not at all special anymore to other people, and also to us a bit. It lost the interest.
Yeah, because you're hipsters. And
exactly.
And once something becomes cool, it's like, no, I'm not going to do
like
this anymore.
It was like, I was in ChatGPT before ChatGPT. Of course. And so that was, for example, a very funny moment for me of like really going with the technology, and then it became actually kind of not so interesting. But now it's really nice, because now some weeks ago I was revisiting kind of the piece and sketches I had for developing the piece, and now I'm like, the piece is really interesting, because I realized now, I mean, even back then, but now even more, I realized, okay, but the piece is actually way more about this idea of a letter exchange, the history of the letter exchange. Like, there's a lot of different other like historic layers and musical layers, and then because we quote some Beethoven songs in the piece and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot more layers that have to do with the language model. Yeah. But it's not about the language model.
Yeah, the LLM is just a tool.
And then I think, so I saw like, oh, actually there is potential there for this piece, without just being this like piece of like, look, we created this machine who answers. Yeah. Which is fine, but so it's nice, because I saw, okay, there's more potential, so maybe I can work on it more. Would be nice at some point. Cool. So that is one technology lesson I had. Like, sometimes it's really cool, but if you're a hipster, then you will get bored of it really quick. But then you should think again, because maybe actually it's not only about the technology.
For sure. Cool.
Yeah.
So to
machines.
To machines.
Technology. Technology. I mean, I had a question that was very similar in this whole topic, which. So my question actually was, do you ever think about nostalgia when you do a project? It's like, what do you think about nostalgia? But for me, the project, the question came because I was thinking about technology and art, because I was thinking about like, does art always have to? This exactly what you asked me, basically. Does it always has to include the new technology? Is it important for art to get somewhere? And then somehow I thought, but actually, from you, I really want to know is like, how do you deal with like the past, but more in the sense of like personal nostalgia?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say that I personally don't experience nostalgia so much, but this is like a very personal thing.
Yes, but this is why I ask.
Everyone experiences it differently.
Of course.
But I mean, do you know this like theory of like how nostalgia works in like the context of like popular culture?
You mean that it like always repeats and comes back?
In 30-year
Of
cycles,
course.
Because like now we have this like 90s nostalgia, right? In the previous decade we had 80s nostalgia.
You can already feel the early 2000s nostalgia coming like very strongly. So yes,
within the hipster cycles for sure. But
exactly.
But like I'm talking like for example with fashion, right? You see all these everyone walking with these shirts that are they don't cover their belly buttons. Right, that's very much that's very 90s.
Yeah, it's the 90s.
And of course, the 90s are echoes of the 60s.
Yes,
which is
the question though is are the 60s echoes of the 30s, and are the 30s echoes of the how do you say it? 900s
of the Mahler times,
or is it exponential?
I'm not sure. And also like another question, like would it speed up? Like would the cycles of nostalgia speed up as time goes on, because like we are like living through like an accelerationist
will
period.
We be nostalgic for yesterday?
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, that's a nice question. Are you nostalgic for yesterday?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting, but I don't think you can be like it doesn't fit the definition. But maybe at some point it will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the cycles of like, for example, memes on the internet now.
Yes.
You remember that memes used to live for like a couple of weeks or even more?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, years.
Like,
No.
Like, do you remember the Harlem Shake, for example? Like,
yes, but also I forgot about it.
Like this thing has been going like for weeks when it was, and like today I can't imagine a modern meme like living more than a day, right?
No, it's true. You have then these things, but they kind of float over the rest and they stay super long, but then they're not like these memes anymore.
Yeah, they're more than memes. Like for example, do you know Skibbity Toilet?
Yes. Yes. More than a meme.
But that's what I'm saying. Like it has to like ascend the memery.
Yeah, exactly.
It started as a meme.
Yeah.
But like it ascended.
Yeah.
I mean some memes are like for example the Giga Chad. Pretty successful meme.
I mean that is it's very successful meme, and the word now, but this is also like now it's probably in the Duden or whatever. You know?
It's like ingrained in the culture.
Yes,
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. So like nostalgia in this context, it's interesting. I think that if to continue this conversation about the large language models, I think they in a way they help a lot of people experience nostalgia.
Yeah, this is both what I think.
But they also really hinder it because they give you like a very filtered image of the past.
Yes.
For example, for my project with Elena, we are generating like album covers for the songs that we're writing. And a lot of times we write like these nonsense texts based on like these old texts from the 18th century, and then we just give the text to the LLM and we tell it, okay, please generate a bunch of images that correspond to this text. In the style of 18th, 19th century German folklore art.
Yes.
And of course, the result really looks like the kind of art that you would expect. But on the other hand, it really colors your impression of this art. And then when you actually see real art from the time, you're always surprised. You're always surprised by how much like how do you call it? Like repetitive it is. Like it's not the impression you get from the LLM, and it really paints our image of the past and of how we interpret nostalgia. You know, I might create like an electronic track that it really in the style of the 80s.
Yes.
But because we are so conditioned to experience 80s nostalgia in a very specific way, you might not even experience it as like 80s style, which is insane to me.
Yeah,
like
I understand.
The real thing sometimes feels more fake
I understand.
in the age of LLMs.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking now, maybe this is a tiny more precise the question. Like, do you? This I very understand because there's a difference between this type of nostalgia of like nostalgia for a time that you haven't actually lived in.
Yeah.
Like, which I guess is more the when you say nostalgia, especially in art, is the thing you think about is the like Dua Lipa sounding like the disco or stuff like that, and it's like people are nostalgic for it, but it's like we were not born in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were born, then you would probably think that disco is cringe.
You would think a disco is cringe, and you would definitely not be nostalgic when you
Yes,
listen to Dua Lipa.
yes.
No way. So my just small question is, do you ever? It's just a small question,
Yes.
more personal question. Do you think you ever actively deal with like more personal nostalgia, you know, like nostalgia for like a time when you were there or like something like that in your work? Like,
I mean, I think that it's really interesting when I travel. Aha, we have a cameo. we can have a cameo.
We have a cameo. Oh, perfect.
Hello,
frame.
Kitty.
Hello. Oh, okay, yeah. Wow. This is a very rare moment, actually. You may continue. I think the cat
do you currently experience nostalgia?
No, this is amazing. I don't need nostalgia. this is the thing. This is the real thing. Yes.
I think because I'm traveling a lot,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I actually return to the same places.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's nostalgia, but like, yeah, I experienced this feeling. It's like, oh, it's interesting. Like I was here when this thing happened,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And like I have quite a good memory. So like I even remember like the situation around at the time, or like what I was thinking, what kind of person I was. So this is like always interesting to me, like these experiences of like being at the same place that I was like a few years ago, even more than a few years ago, and like just like reflecting on the differences between then and now. Yeah. This is really nice.
That's interesting. I have just a small add-on that I realized. Maybe it's interesting. I realized I have this really weird thing of these two things of nostalgia combined sometimes. So like, for example, I mean, I think it's a very common thing. People say this all the time. Like, oh, I was there and then I was listening to this music or whatever, you know, and then the music reminds me of this time when I was there. Like, it's a very typical thing. But then it's so funny now I think about it, and it's like, I remember I was like once in Amsterdam and I was listening to like shoegaze, which is exactly this kind of thing of like it's from the early 90s.
Yes.
I was like barely born. I cannot have nostalgia in the sense of like, I remember.
Yeah.
But then I have nostalgia for when I was in Amsterdam, because I was listening to having nostalgia for this music, you know, it's like really weird actually if I think about it. Yeah. It's really weird because I'm nostalgic for listening to this music, but then it mixes with the actual nostalgia of me that I had with the experience of listening to this music. Yeah, and I was just thinking, this is interesting.
I mean, music is super powerful in this sense. Like, there are all these examples, right, of people with Alzheimer's. That like they have no idea where they are, what they're doing, or whatever, and then you play them a song from their past, and suddenly they remember so many things. So it's like really insane, like how music is like ingrained in our minds, and how it creates these like neurological connections that actually help us remember and help our brain like process thought, which is this is really insane. So to nostalgia?
Nah.
So now it's my turn. Cool. Tell us something we don't know about you.
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the very obvious thing would be that I'm not a cat person. But it's just boring. I will think about something else. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is also too general because I was already saying that. But I do think, at least I was never, I was not so aware of myself that I am this very practical person. The thing I was talking about earlier a bit, like, was I was always considering myself more of, quite theoretical, but quite like person who likes to read, who likes to like talk about stuff a lot, think about stuff a lot, who like also like thinks about what piece to write for like half a year and whatever. This kind of very like, quite overthinking person, which I think I still am. But I mean, this is something that actually I didn't know about myself. Was that like that I really have the most fun really in the moment doing something that could be like something very practical, like I don't know, soldering a small light to something, or for like a music instrument I'm designing, some very like this kind of work with the hand kind of thing, but practical work with the like kind of workshop mentality thing. I think it was always there a bit. I was always kind of into this, and I was someone who, but I was never considering myself as this like person who's like, let's build a shelf for ours. Like these people who like just craft and just build stuff. I never considered myself this person, but at least in the artistic process, I kind of am actually.
Interesting. You're actually a craftsman.
I am more a craftsman than I thought.
A DIYer.
I mean, this is very obvious to people who like saw the last couple of things I did, but it was not so obvious for me for a long time. So maybe I think this is something that at least I didn't really know until myself, and I had to understand to be also a bit more chill with myself, because because I was getting really frustrated sometimes of like sitting forever on the desk trying to write a super complex score, which I still like a lot. It's not that like I don't like this, but I realized, okay, I just need to do something more practical sometimes, and it's much more productive.
I mean, what's the most practical thing you have built?
Yeah, so I think really things that fall into this category is, I mean, there's the whole big category, but this is very obvious, and I think this is the same for a lot of composers, is like the rehearsals and stuff like that. This is the same. I mean, this I knew before, but I always considered myself more of this like typical like desk composer who like locks themselves in a room forever and then writes, which maybe is also a thing you're a bit like taught when you start, your composition bachelor or whatever. This is like the image everyone has of a composer, and then you take this image and then you try to make it into something cool, but like so like the practical thing, like 100%. So in the rehearsal, and I did some more projects where I was more almost like directing, and that is practical and super fun to me, like really being there, checking everything, like the lights, like where the people are, like all these like very practical, also a bit like stage technical things. Super fun for me. Really practical, more like this craftsman thing.
Yeah, something that you built. Like I'm
interested. I did some couple of like installation works. So like my last thing was electric guitar that was played by it's basically like EBOs. They're a tiny bit modified, but they're basically like salvaged EBOs, like put into the installation. Like I break the thing apart, so it's not really like the same as if you buy an EBO, but it works the same thing. It's like the mechanism, so it makes the string vibrate with a magnet, and then these little magnets go like they move along the string with like some motors. So they get different partials of the string, which you can do as a guitarist. Every guitarist who used the EBO before knows this. But then I built this kind of mechanism of really always repeating exactly the same partials, which is quite hard to do with an EBO. And also having these super slow, because the motors I have, they move incredibly slow, or I try to make them move very slow, which is not a very human thing to move incredibly slow, very steady. So this is a thing, and for this, really, I had to build like a frame, how to mount the motors, how to mount the guitar, I was hanging the guitar into a frame. You have to learn how electricity works, basically, like how to power the thing correctly. You have to learn how to solder and all this stuff, which I did for quite a while. And it's very practical. So one very practical thing that was quite far away was what I didn't use in this project, but I learned last year, was how to use. Now I don't know the term, but how to use these programs to do electric schematics, like really circuit schematics.
Yeah.
They have a name. I forgot it. I knew it before. I learned how to really do that. like how to
Ooh.
really do a electric schematic.
Wow, nice.
So you can send in the schematic. So you have the schematic for something like this, for an installation like this, because it sounds simple. Okay, you have some motors, but there's if you want to do it quite professional, there's always so many things to consider. Like you need to have a on and off button. You need to have a reset button. You need to have maybe a light that indicates that the thing is working and powered on. There's so many things. Maybe you want to have maybe you want to have it connected to a Wi-Fi so you can. I did stuff like, okay, and then on my computer over web browser, I can set the exact position. You know, I don't have to have because you need to try out which harmonies are the best and all these things. Like it can get quite complicated.
Yes.
And then you do need to design your own circuits and stuff. Then you cannot just use like a pre-made thing because it's very specific. So I learned this, and then so doing these schematics, also very fun. This is a very like, just you learn how the program works, and there's a very like this monotone but nicely meditative thing of just like how can I fit all the components in the least amount of space in the most ODC nice way, you know? It's kind of this thing. And
so you'll have like an elegant professional looking.
Exactly. Like of course I'm not a professional, but like as professional as I can, and maybe I have also some other interest or some other criteria than like someone who will build this for like a mass production. I wanted to look at very specifically. Maybe I want to have the parts very visible actually or something like that. So I learned this, and then to send it in, and then you can print online or also in shops very easy. These just your circuit, and then it's very easy to assemble and stuff like that, and it's very much more professional. And then if you just like DIY something together. So it's still like DIY, but it's like the next step.
Yeah.
So this is something very practical. I had a lot of fun with.
Oh, nice.
And they look very nice, and I also used them as like visual. Like I took ideas from them for like some visual aspects of like the documentation of the piece and stuff like that. Yeah. Nice. So I was also into the just the visual part of it.
Cool.
Yes.
Let's drink to that. So to
circuit design.
To circuit design.
Yes. Yeah, I mean this actually fits very well because that was very similar. Just tell me something about a project either you did or you're working on. I'm very curious, but can be also something very small. Like I want to know something that you had like fun with, like maybe a tiny thing. I did this project, and this thing was super fun. Just do this tiny thing.
Yeah,
like it's more like a detail, like that you liked a lot in a project that you did, or that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm also interested in the project as well.
I mean, I can talk about the album I released the other day.
Yes.
So I released an album called War Loops.
Yes.
Which is it's basically like a piano piece for piano, you know?
Yes.
I'm like a piano piece for a violin.
This is an interesting project.
So it's like 10 short loops for piano. And I think that the writing process was really fun because it was not sitting in front of like a blank page and writing music. It was sitting in front of the piano and playing music for hours until I got like the core ideas crystallized. So there was like a lot of so like during the writing process, you might have a lot of things that don't go into the piece, but you still write them. Yeah. So here I had a lot of things not going into the piece, but I still played them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because each of these loops had like a lot of variations until I found like the actual.
They're very condensed.
Yeah, exactly. And until I found like so this was really fun. Like just playing and playing until I got the thing I wanted, and then once I have it, it's like. That's it.
Yes.
It's really nice. And then and I don't even need like anything in addition, right? I can already like press the record button, record this, just shortly notate it, and I have the piece.
I see.
So this was really fun to work on, and I'm really getting into this. Like I really like the theoretical aspect of composition, of just like coming up with like these crazy ideas with the algorithms and like writing them down, experimenting with them, also working on like a long form piece of music that like takes you through a narrative journey. Like this is all very fun, but like I'm really getting into this type of more spontaneous kind of music making, of like recording songs or like these short piano loops. Now I started working on like some other piano loops. I call them sequences. So I'm doing these sequences, and it's the classic sequencer, right? It's like going up in fourths.
I see. Nice.
Nice. So this is like really fun, just like doing this kind of stuff.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you're really like just at the piano and you're just playing, repeating the loops, or like changing it a bit, or
and
like
the amazing thing about like, have you ever tried to play a loop on the piano?
It's very hard.
Because the piano is such an unwieldy instrument, right? It's not like, unless you're an extremely professional pianist who like really knows exactly how to get the sound out of the instrument, it's almost impossible to play the same thing twice on the piano.
Very hard.
So if you listen to the recordings, so what I did for the album, I recorded each of the 10 loops for 6 minutes. So you hear these records. So total, you have like 1 hour of music. But when you listen to these loops, you hear that like none of them is the same as the previous one. Like you hear the music for like a couple of seconds. Like it depends on the loop. Some of them are shorter than others, but like you hear the loop and then you hear it again, and it's like it's not exactly the same thing. And it's like again and again. It's like really interesting once like this is the only musical aspect you have in a piece. You actually like the music comes from the small differences between the performances or the instances of the loop.
Nice. Cool. I have a super short story to this. Do you know the Vexation by Satie, the piece?
No.
That is a loop piece. It's like, it's longer. It's much longer.
It's this one. I think I know, like, it's just like
repeats,
4 chords,
it's very famous.
Right?
It's a bit more, it's like 2 lines. So there's more than 4 chords, but it's like 2 lines of piano music.
Yeah, and you need to repeat it like 300 times or something like that.
800 something.
800, yeah. It's something insane. Yeah,
and it's very slow. It's much longer than your loops, actually. It's a loop. I did this in high school with a lot of other people. We had this
like a full performance.
Wildest project maybe I did in my life was in high school.
Interesting.
We had a music teacher who was very into John Cage, and even had an interesting. I think John Cage was once in our school when he visited Munich or something. There's like very history of the history, but I think he was visiting the theater, not even the music. We had not like a big music department or anything like this. We had a quite nice theater department, but somehow our music teacher was very inspired by John Cage and this kind of more conceptual early modernist thing. And for some reason, he thought it's a good idea to do this Vexation with like our class, which we had like in the whole year, like maybe 6 people who played piano or something like that. And we performed it. We had like this open day of school, and it was the first performance in the beginning. And so I had to play this stupid loop in front of like a lot of people. First of all, and then we had to switch because we were multiple pianists, because it takes forever.
It's impossible for a single person to do it.
I don't think we did a full performance, because we did not. I think a full performance is like almost the whole like 24 hours. I think we did like a 12 or something, which is already crazy. And I remember us switching during the loop, like literally me playing still like the right hand and the next person playing the right. Like,
nice.
Really like that's just something that came to my mind, like the only loop piece thing I ever performed. But so it's incredibly hard to play the same thing and tiring mentally.
And the interesting thing about loops is like, when do you stop? Like it's really easy to start. When do you stop?
Because you go on and on and on. Then you don't want to stop, and then you get crazy. Nice.
It's like I thought if I ever do this live, like when is the moment that I stop? Like probably when I play the wrong notes. Because eventually you make mistakes.
Yeah, of course. I see. Yeah, this reminds me of I just was in a concert, also with a very old concert. with this piano, like a very old piece from the 70s with the piano playing on itself, like one of the earliest AI kind of play piano things. And then it was so funny because the piano has no stopping mechanism also in the program. So it's like from the 70s, and they didn't program when does it stop improvising. It was like a piano that improvises. And then like and then it was so funny because then they had to go on stage and just decide to press the button and like, no, we stop. Like the humans had to intervene in the performance. It was so funny. It was a very funny one. I was not sure. I was wondering after the concert, is there a technical reason that it's difficult in the program to make it stop actually? Because it just generates and generates, and maybe it's actually a programming question that was difficult in a time or is difficult from the concept, or was it just them not being interested in like it just goes on. It was very interesting. It was very funny performance I saw.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. So to
loops.
To loops.
To be careful to not move too much. I don't want to offend him.
So, my next question, you'll like it. Assuming you have no limitations, no time limitation, no budgetary limitations, no any limitations that you could think of, what's your fantasy project?
Oh my God. Does it have to be a fantasy project, like of the genre fantasy?
Of the genre fantasy,
I mean, it probably will be. Oh my God, okay. Oh my God, to be honest, I think the answer is so boring, but it is just doing the projects I'm doing right now. Or the projects I did or I want to redo. I work a lot on, this is maybe important, like I do quite a lot of, like, if I have a second performance for a piece, I do work a bit on it. Like I do a lot of these like re-editions kind of thing, like working longer on bigger projects, especially if they're quite challenging. And then it's very normal in a first version of the piece that not everything is realized that you imagine. It's very normal. I mean, sometimes it's also good if stuff doesn't get realized, but
with each iteration you add more.
I do this quite a lot. I add more, or I just make stuff more on the point what I want.
So maybe tell us about these projects and describe like the ultimate version with like,
Because to be honest, it would not be some random project that I think
of course.
It would be one of these to the fullest what I really want to do. I think there's one project that comes in mind that I was working on during last year, a bit longer, which is this fantasy piece of it's like I had like a lot of images from like terrariums and stuff like that, very like nature scenery, whatever could be on stage in a theater, but could also be more in like just a room. It is at the end, I think if I would really have all the options, then it would be like a kind of theater opera piece or something like that. So it would be on stage, this kind of really like, I call it like, I would say now jungle, but it doesn't need to be like tropical, like, but this kind of very, very chaotic, like a lot of plants, a lot of like, I don't know, sand, stone, like this very like wild nature landscape, kind of terrarium inspired, and that is really merged together with these basically robots, like moving parts that are artificial, that are maybe are reminiscent of some plants, but they clearly have their own way of moving and way of like, so it's basically like the idea of the piece was like, what if like human civilization dies out, but like our technology actually survives, and how would it adapt to just living in on our planet? So this was kind of the idea.
It's like a post-apocalyptic.
It's a very post-apocalyptic thing. Yes, it's like kind of this. And it was just this idea, and it was intentionally a very like. So the idea was actually even not really think logically, okay, how would it actually work? Because probably we cannot even imagine, because we cannot even imagine without us, like a real post-human scenario we can actually not imagine, because it's like post-human. That's the whole point, that it's not us imagining it. So it was more this weird alternate universe where, like, I had this one time idea. It's like the story of like human, of like not human life, but of like life in general on Earth.
Yeah.
But it's actually like robots. It's actually like
it's like WALL-E.
It's like WALL-E, exactly. It's literally like this. So it's like I was imagining, like, it's like this weird digital or machine creature coming out of the water, and starting to walk instead of like a frog.
Yeah.
So basically, this is the whole concept of the piece. But I mean, of course, there's a lot of layers. Like, there's this whole like post-human question. Can we even imagine this? There's the whole thing of like the idea of like doing like an opera piece, but it's like like objects. Like, it's not humans on
like
stage.
There will be no humans on stage.
There would be no humans on stage. There would be, though, probably a different layer, and I'm not 100% sure about this. There would probably be humans operating some of these. At least in all versions I did up till now of this. I had always like kind of humans controlling the machines with, like, I don't know, a controller or something like that, kind of puppeteering the things, which on one hand, of course, goes a bit against the concept, and I would be into trying out one piece where it's like actually a bit of a more I think where the machines actually have some behaviorism that is not directly controlled. I would be super interested for a project, and it's maybe something that I would want to do in a PhD.
Yeah,
is something going a bit in this direction, but like for me, the humans controlling from outside on the theater level is actually totally fine, because it's more about creating the scenario. It's not about actually an experiment or something like that. And so I did a version of this. I did a very small version of this here in Bern, which is just a super small crawling weird robot thing that I found. It's kind of like a toy.
Yeah,
it's very interesting movements. And I did a version for a bigger robot like that, which kind of looks like a spider or crab, but it's quite big. It's really huge. It has also this weird, intimidating thing. It's also an object, like, why does these objects exist? Because it's not a toy. It's too expensive to be a toy. It's way too sophisticated. It's like a really well-moving robot, well-engineered robot. It looks like a spider. Not really. Like, it's like a hexapod. It has like, it's like, it's just weird object for so, which I like. And it fitted perfectly in this, and it was. But then I got really into a lot of different levels. I was like, okay, do my machines mimic behaviorisms of like real animals? I was starting looking into, okay, how do spiders communicate? Because I was like, okay, it's kind of like, it looks like a spider. People will think it's like a spider. But how do spiders communicate? Do spiders make sounds?
Yeah.
Like, there were all these research questions, more biological.
Yeah.
And then and then I tried to find a way up between that and then basically what the piece itself is from a musical standpoint is these move, and I really amplify all the sounds of the machines and the motors that are part of these weird robot objects.
And this creates a
soundscape. So it's basically a landscape and a soundscape that is moved. So it's kind of this cybernetic still life almost, because it's not necessarily. I mean, I evolved it a bit into there is some. Not really story, but there's some stuff happening, but it's more like this scenery. And then I was working a lot on so just how to make it like sound very interesting, and how to get the most interesting out of these. Like the hexapod, for example, is just like crazy. It's like, I don't know, like 18 or more small servo motors.
Wow.
And they all have a slight different sound, but then it's kind of challenging to get really interesting results also, because it gets also very repetitive, because it's a machine, like it's made to be very repetitive. Yeah, so this is a project, and this would be a project where, like, okay, I can imagine a very big thing, where I have
that you like build an entire forest.
Build really a forest thing, or it could be forest or desert or whatever, like specific landscape. That's also interesting to me, because then it's like, how do these interact with the nature materials, my robots, whatever. I do want to have a tree robot. like something that resembles like some kind of cybernetic plant that moves, because there's these plants that close really quickly in night. Like there's plants that actually move. And
yes.
I was doing some
I
research
mean, all
on
plants
that.
move, but
of
like,
course,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like move like really visible, like
That you
really
can see
clear.
that. Yeah.
So there's a lot of like potential more on the practical side of like
Yeah.
like stuff to put, but then also like like to make it much more deep about this question of like, are these real animals? Are these representing like what are these representing? Like are these real animals or are these something completely different?
Yeah.
But because I was choosing these things that kind of like, so the another option I was using a lot, I was working a lot with is drones. It's kind of these insect things that fly around and have this like super high pitched sound. And I was working with the sound and working with like, oh, can I have them behind glass so it damps the sound, but then have a microphone, like all these things, very technical things, but like for me it was super exciting. So this is for sure. I mean, this is a project I will work on more, and I will try to work on make it like bigger. But it's not only about making it bigger and add more stuff. It's about like really making it, really focusing. Maybe I decide, okay, I'm really interested in this, like that that they and this research of like actual real animals and insects and how they behave, and maybe transporting this into the piece. And maybe this is the really interesting part, because there's a lot of super. I learned that spiders. There's specific spiders in the desert who communicate by like tapping on the ground, and then the other spiders can hear the vibrations basically, and it's a very musical concept. And then there was stuff that was super exciting.
So you're basically trying to create like this artificial biome in a way.
It's a very artificial. It's like the idea of even like an artificial like a glossary of like animals, insects, and plants. I was even thinking of really like, I would love to then publish a small book or a website where you, and it's like all these totally made up objects. I was also thinking of like modifying the robots or take the drones or what I found a bit, you know, like add some weird stuff that maybe also make sound or whatever, and then have this kind of glossary of like a bestiary of like weird cybernetic creatures, and then do this also in a nice, like publish a nice book or have a website or something like this. That is
I mean, you know, there are like a lot of artists doing something similar these days, but without the concert aspect of it.
So I mean, I do think I am still
Goodbye,
like
cat.
Yes, I am still like a composer and a sound. I'm super into sound, and that's also, and I do. It's like I mean, I do come from it from the perspective. Okay, I found this weird object. I like it a lot. I like the visuals a lot, but like also I wanna create a soundscape with it. Yeah, it's just an aspect that I like a lot. So I don't know if it's, for me it's one more thing of this, but it's also a thing that I like to focus on, and I think it's a bit underrepresented maybe.
Yes,
it's not something
definitely.
you would necessarily think about first off. It's like I did a lot of research of like robotic art and robots in music, of course, and a lot of it is about, oh, can we make a robot play and improvise with a human and play the piano and stuff like that, and I think my biggest difference to that is like, I'm really not interested in these like tools or machines as tools to do something. I'm really interested in them as themselves, as their like, I mean, as objects. Like, I'm really interested in them as like, it's more like an object archaeology. It's more of like, okay, humans built these weird toys or weird things, and then the sound is just a very important part of like finding out their really true, like the essence of what is this object is a really important part, and rather than what it is made for. Like it's more of like, it's a more aesthetic question. It's more like, what is cool about this object?
Yes,
it's more this.
And I see our lights have turned off. Why? They were on battery. Nice.
Sorry.
Hey, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and maybe shortly also tell us about your other project. It's the Alpine Symphony thing,
so,
right?
So this is one main project I'm continue to working on, the robot thing. Then I have this project that is about, I would say it's a staging of the Alpensinfonie by Richard Strauss. A very romantic Programmmusik. Very like, also kind of kitsch. A bit like, the context is very important, and it's like this is Programmmusik already back in the time. It was a bit maybe looked down on. It's not like absolute music. It's not like the really intellectual one. It's more the one that just paints a nice landscape. This was what appealed to me about this piece. And it's a staging where I take this piece and I rearrange it, but in a very like radical fashion, onto a theater scene of like these scientists or glaciologists in the future, and so the idea is basically they saved some ice from this big glacier from the Alps, and they're like doing tests on this ice. Basically, it's a bit like they try to understand with the practical probe what was even this thing like. Oh, there was ice like some years ago still in the mountains, like, or like it's this idea a bit again like of a post-glacial situation where the humans need to like. So they try to figure out that they're just on the stage measuring the stuff. It's kind of like a expedition. Also, like I imagine they are in a kind of a very high alpine observatory laboratory thing. So they have to walk up the mountain also there. So there's a whole expedition thing, which then mirrors the original, because the original is really a sound painting of a hike. It's really like you start in the morning. It's really like Strauss, super like super clear. Like, okay, now is the sunset. Like now is the peak, and now is the storm, and now it's like really like this. So I'm really mimicking this, but it's like this science. This group of scientists going onto the glacier, onto to their lab, to the station on the glacier, and so it's very fun. It's really like, so the setting is totally different than the really romantic kitschy setting. It's a very scientific thing. I have a lot of objects that they use that they make sound with. So they're like singers there, but they are at the same time also kind of percussionists, because they really use a lot of these objects. I found very like nice sounds I can make with like the eyes and stuff like that. So kind of object theater. But then I do have musicians that in the video, but also live on stage, and they accompany the group of singers or of scientists with some fragments. So there is like real transcriptions of the romantic music, but there's always something that makes it weird. Like I have this, like the singers also, they sing some phrases from Strauss, but they have these like masks on because they're working with the dry ice at this point. That is like they need to have the masks to like breathe nicely because it's like slightly poisonous. But then they try to sing Strauss, but they have the mask on, so the Strauss sounds super weird through the masks. Or there's like the string players who are, because of course they're on the glacier, they're like in these super warm clothes, and like like really they have the violins also wrapped into this plastic thing because like it's the violin cannot survive otherwise, So there's all these weird kind of surreal things that make the Strauss, you can still recognize totally it's like romantic music at some points, but like it just sounds like through this filter, but the filter is not like a digital thing I put on it. It's like practical effects basically. That is the other big project I have. And
how would you imagine like the maximalist version of it?
No, I mean this is a project. I also did a couple of different versions for it now. I did a version for really 7 singers, so it was really only focused on the singers, and it was really like, it was more of a concert version, I would say. Like they still had like costumes, so to say, and some stuff, but it was really focused on what is actually music. Like, so it was really, how can I transfer this romantic orchestra material into this choir, which is very inspired by even like stuff like yodel and technique. So there's a lot of like romantic alpine lore in this piece. So this is why it's also singers, and then they sing also in the Rätoromanisch language. So like there's a lot of this. There's a lot of lore.
Yes.
But so I did a version for 7 singers, which is quite like more of a concert thing. There's some video. There's some videos of the glacier. I was actually going to the glacier and filming some videos. It's like the drone and all this kind of stuff, and with some musicians on the glacier. And we brought the horn and the cello onto the glacier and shit like this.
Yeah,
that's cool. But like, so this version is more like a version. The singers are really the performers, and the other stuff happens in the video. And now I'm working more on it's a smaller version because it's for more practical reasons. It's a smaller version that is more going towards really a music theater. So that some of the musicians are not only in the video, also on stage. So I guess my final version would be something like a combination of all these ideas. Like, can be a big ensemble of singers, and then like at least a string quartet, 4 horn players or brass players, something. Just a bigger ensemble. So it mirrors slightly the big symphony, because the Strauss thing is a big symphony. I don't want a big symphony thing because it's a opera, but like it's a piece that could fit very well as a real opera. That could be just a big symphony ensemble. And it's not about necessarily adding much more stuff or more complicated like technical stuff or with the objects. I think that is all very nice. It's more about like making it really like as long as the Alpen Symphony also, which is like a 40-minute piece, which it was already there, but really, really taking achieving the same amount of scale that the Alpen Symphony has, basically. Like in the ensemble, in the sound, maybe you have this moment where like it really sounds almost like an orchestra. So getting a bit closer.
So in order to get it to sound like an orchestra, you would actually need like a larger ensemble.
It's a bit of a larger ensemble. I don't think I would need a whole orchestra, but it's like a larger ensemble, like more singers, or like the amount of singers I had, but then with a live ensemble on stage. It'll be very nice. And then it's, I mean, a lot of it is also, to be super honest, is like to have performances where you, especially something like this, really having a performance that is really a production that is really like an opera production, which is very difficult to do if you don't have like a big opera commission, because you really need opera production. You need more people.
You need the
work
budget.
on it. You need the budget. You need people. Actually, people work. I do quite a lot myself, and sometimes it's super cool, but sometimes it's also a problem. Would need someone really doing really nice costumes.
Yes,
and someone like even doesn't need to be like much crazier than I think what we did or what I did, but like just more professional, a bit more professional, a bit slightly nicer, maybe with some slight new creative ideas. And then like a thing where you can like rehearse a lot and also rehearse like more staging part stuff, more the music stuff. Like, so super boring, but basically with all these answers is like, it's just the same project with like more time and more money. It's basically like this. But with this project, there is not like a crazy new idea. Like with the robot thing, it would really evolve.
It would be
really
something
evolve
completely
and something
different.
else. With this piece, it's more like, it's just like a nice
just staging. A bigger scale,
like a bit bigger scale, nice staging. Yes, and then there's still the Beethoven and song cycle and writing letter AI project. That is still there. That's still there that I will work on. Yeah. So that is the
cool. So to the glaciers.
To the glaciers. Let's drink them.
Okay, right. So
nice.
That's the last question. To me.
I ask you, yes.
Went by so fast, huh?
Yeah, no, but the thing is that you answered basically my last question with my previous question. Because my last question was, I mean, maybe, I will still ask it. My last question was, if you know, after you did the last album, the War Loops, like, if you would just be now, locking myself in, I'm recording an album. Can also be wherever, like a place, like you say, like this kind of thing, like I have a small cabin or whatever, or like a small studio or whatever. I record an album for, maybe it doesn't have to be long, next weeks or month or whatever. Like what would be the style? Or like, like what would you record? It's like just you recording music. What would you record? Where? Would you like, it's a dream situation? And also, what would be the album cover?
Interesting.
Yes.
I mean, I have a bunch of songs that I've written for like the past 2 years that I just want to like you said, like lock myself in a room and record all of them. Let's think. So what would be the ideal place to record this?
It's more this idea of like, would you just be like, it's a bit similar to your question. It's like a fantasy, like you could choose whatever. Would you just be where you normally record or like at home? Or would you say like, no, I want to, I will have this small studio in the forest or something like this.
I mean,
or
probably
in some other city,
won't
in Japan.
I can tell you where it won't be. It probably won't be in Tel Aviv because I'm sick of these like sirens.
Yes,
that, like,
I understand.
you sit down to record and then It's like,
Yeah, shit.
okay,
Yes.
I guess we're not recording this song tonight.
Yes.
So yeah. So probably, yeah. I mean, if it's like my previous question, if there are like no
No, it's like this.
limitations,
It's like this.
so
It's like this.
so I would just probably like a cabin in the middle of nowhere, no internet.
Okay.
This is very important. Just my instruments and my recording equipment. The nice thing is that I don't really need good acoustics because it's mainly electronic. And yeah, I'll just like churn these songs while I'm not recording. I'll go for like a nice hike in the nature. And yeah, the album cover.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's the main question, actually.
Yeah. The main question. Yeah. I don't know, probably myself taking a shower in the river or something.
Ooh. Okay. Okay. Wow.
That's why I think this would be a nice album cover.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Like waterfall. A waterfall.
Ooh, a
and then,
waterfall.
like,
yeah.
Actually shower
Yeah.
in the waterfall.
I mean, actually, my hair looks way better when it's wet, you know?
No, I mean,
so it's like...
it sounds like a super cool cover.
Yeah.
It's very convincing. Very convincing. And then it's really nice if it's then like this very subversive electronic music, because like if it looks like this like singer-songwriter thing, you know, like I locked myself in with my guitar and I wrote these acoustic songs, and then it's like, it's not this. Then it is very nice.
It looks like,
you know, it really looks like, and you're in the nature and like and the river. Yes.
True.
Yes.
I mean, what would you do? Like, where would you go to record an album?
Yeah, I was wondering. I mean, my first thing would also be this kind of like very locked, far away. There is actually an album by Mount Erie, the artist, which is kind of like this. He actually locked himself in a cabin in Scandinavia or somewhere. Like it's thing somewhere in the woods in Scandinavia, like no internet, next town is like 2-hour drive away or something like this. Like really, and he did this very intentionally, and he did record like a sad acoustic songwriter album, of course.
Yeah.
And like it's a lot of songs, it's like 40 songs or something. But I really like this album. It's like I love this. So the first thing that comes to mind would also be something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think actually my answer would be, if I think of it, would be like, maybe like go to Japan to record studio, record with some. I mean, okay, it was without some people, okay, but like still record in a totally different environment. I mean, if I would record with a band, then it would be super cool. But like, if it's just me, it could be still super cool. Like, it can be Japan, but could also be. Japan is cool because I was just there and I'm like into that, but could also be, there's a lot of other places that would be super cool for that, I think. But like a big city kind of thing. Having the studio there and meeting a lot of people, that could be actually right now I would choose that. Yeah. Right now I would choose that. But
and the album cover?
Yeah, so and then the music would be, I do think I would be then, okay, I would do something very different than I did before. Which is not difficult because I never really recorded an album. But like, I mean, probably at the end it would also be some electronic music, but maybe, I don't know, maybe I would take like a guitar or whatever, even if I'm not consider myself a guitarist, but maybe I would take some instrument. I got really into modular synthesizers and this stuff, so more analog electronic stuff, so I would probably do something like that. And the album cover, so depends. If I would decide for let's say it's like electronic music, but if I decide for a style more of like, okay, I will try to do like a more, like in the style of a genre that exists, like let's say I do a electro shoegaze thing or whatever, then I would totally go with like the, you know, like skyline of the city at night where I am, like totally this super cliche. Amazing, I think. If I would be then more like, and I'm like, okay, actually I don't want to do that, I want to do something more that and I would do some more like very abstract electronic music, then I would also go with more abstract album cover. Maybe could be still a photo of the city, but then like more abstract,
Yeah.
something like that. But then it would relate to the city I go to. I think the cover.
By the way, using LLMs for generating album covers, amazing.
Of course.
Like I did for
course.
some of my tracks. It's like like when you give it the right prompt, it can really return like a really nice result.
It's really nice. I was using it for some accompanying material to some of the pieces.
Yeah.
I was using it a bit, but sparely, but I did use it.
Yeah.
Especially for my robot plant. It was amazing because of course I was doing a lot of I sketched myself a lot, but then of course I was like, what is it's such an obvious thing. How would the AI do it? And then there was a lot of stuff which was totally not what I expected, but then there was some stuff that was really scarily close to what I expected because they were weird or something different. So I did use it a bit for that, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good for some inspiration for like understanding what is the zeitgeist for
exactly, because it gives you what most people would imagine if I tell you the thing.
Exactly.
And then you can be like, oh, but this actually, I don't want that. Or you can be like, oh, no, but I want exactly that. I want really the zeitgeist feeling, No, it's good for that. Yes.
Cool. So, what should we drink to?
We don't drink to being alone in a room and record music. I
no.
think.
By the way, do you know Bo Barnham?
Yes.
Like comedian and filmmaker.
Yes.
Have you ever heard his album/Netflix special Inside?
No.
Okay, I highly recommend it. It's basically him locking himself in a room. This was during COVID.
I see.
And it's actually, I think it's his best work, like both musically and filmmaker wise.
Interesting.
So there are like a lot of benefits of locking yourself in a room.
I mean, now I realized COVID is long enough ago that otherwise the question would have been really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So maybe to getting out of your room, at least every once in a while.
Into another room also.
Yes. Now that you have studied and worked in both Germany, Austria, and Schweiz.
It's the trio.
So you have basically like a full image of like the Deutsche Sprachraum in the context of contemporary music and art.
Yeah.
It would basically be interesting, what are your impressions? How do they compare? And whatever thoughts you have about this.
First, I have to say that I do think in a weird way, I know actually Austria and Switzerland better. Because it's not true. I did some projects also in this year and last year in Germany. So now slowly I'm learning also more. And of course the festivals and stuff. But I never was in Germany really. I did my bachelor there, but I never really felt I'm very actively part of a scene. Other than having some projects and going there or for festivals, but really over a year or something. This I never had in Germany. And Germany is so big that it's very hard to say in Germany.
True.
But I mean, I can still somehow say, I think, just from the, let's say, new music scene, I think, it's really hard because Germany, I think, really has everything, kind of. So Germany, I think, has really just scenes where it's for me it's very conservative and I'm not too excited about it, or very still close to the classical music industry, which is also totally fine, but it's just not at the moment what I'm interested in. It has definitely these parts, but then it has also the parts where it's very connected to very chance or interdisciplinary work and very the if I say here in Switzerland to my friends, let's make it more German, or something like that, it would mean let's make it more wacky, crazy, yes, because there's just a super strong, especially theater movement from in a lot of German places where or for them, maybe for me not, but for them at least, if they come from like Spain or from or the UK or France, then German means the style of very like wacky, like
so from like the
crazy thing
outsider
from the
perspectives,
outside.
it seems
It's
that
not,
Germany is the country of crazy art.
Yeah, it's the country of, like in new music. It's the country of like it's the country of like everyone's doing performative stuff. It's the, like we think all the pieces are ironic. I do think that there is this part of it, which I think is just the case because I mean there is the whole history of like Maurizio Kagel and the like object here that is very like this.
True.
Which is strong in Germany. There's like a lot of these theater movements. There's like in Hamburg, Theater Kampnagel, they're super influential in this. And they do just these shows that are very like, I would say, because also like a lot of different mediums. Like it's not even like multimedia show, but sometimes I think also this idea of like really breaking out, like doing a show, but the show is actually you just go around and talk to people, or like really like concepts that really totally evaporate the new music concept. And this I think is, at least from the outside, Germany is the country where this stuff happens. Like the really like the stuff where you don't have really the borders anymore between like what is music, what is performative art. I do think this is Germany.
And you also have the money, right?
No, of course, it's for the
German
money.
government, at least I don't know in the last few years with the war, but like I know that like for a long time the German government did invest a lot of money into culture.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, or like also something like, I mean, this is not new music, but like or like Documenta or something. This is like, I do think these places is the place where like there's like the scandals and the stuff that you can serve, and this is more in Germany. And I think the new music scene they do get at least a little bit of that, definitely. But yeah, then maybe it's more like in Berlin or in Hamburg or like Köln. Seems there's like cool stuff, but Germany really I feel has everything, which can be very cool. But then it maybe depends very much. You need to really fit into your local scene, otherwise it's getting maybe very frustrating because it can be very different. And then like in Austria, I think compared to that is that Austria has this more, I mean, it's just like smaller and has this more like, there is like I do think there's just these very big figures, one like Beat Furrer, like some very...
He's actually Swiss.
Who's actually Swiss, but like, like also of course through the teaching, but also just through having a lot of like von Wiem and all these like really great, like really important institution for like the last 20 years, 30 years for new music. And I think it's very well established. And it is for me, it's like, for me, it's like a nice in between like, it's very far removed from the classical concert business, but it's still in a way really like concert music. Yeah. And really focused on having this format of like ensemble music continue. And I think there's quite a lot of composers working on that. And I do think there's also very other stuff in Austria. And I think Austria has this very strong, Austria always had the like craziest, weirdest artists, I think. Like there is like this,
the actionists.
There is this Austrian thing of like very conceptual and very like crazy artists. So I do think it's a very interesting situation because I do think there's a bit more like established thing that is still, I would not call it like too conservative or like reactionary or anything like this. I would call like, okay, it's maybe by now, maybe there's a new generation that wants to do new stuff for sure also in Austria, but like it is still there. And you have just these crazy random people in Austria, I think, doing really cool stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of like Austrian artists I like a lot, and composers especially. And then in Switzerland, this is very hard to say from the outside. It's really interesting because from the outside, I never, to be honest, really perceived. I mean, okay, like Beat Furrer, like he's Swiss. Of course, you would think. I mean, he's a Swiss composer, but he's more so well established in the Austrian scene that you think of it more as like, von Wien, like all these things he did for more the Austrian scene. So I was never really thinking beforehand, oh, this composer, he or she is Swiss. You know, like when I was studying still in Munich, I was not aware of like, there's a specific identity of the Swiss composer. Yeah. which with Austria much more.
Yeah, I think in general, like Swiss identity is very fluid, right?
Maybe
Like
it's
they
also,
don't have this like solid national
of course
identity
not.
like you have in
But
Germany or
no, of
Austria
course
or
not. But
other.
then like also
yeah.
I know at least from the, I don't know in music, but I know from the art scene that like the French part and the German part of Switzerland is very detached.
Yeah.
So like maybe there's the identity of like I'm a artist from Geneva or Lausanne for the French part, or I'm an artist from the German part, or even from like the Italian part, or like a Romansch artist.
Yeah.
For sure, but it's not like this Swiss
Yeah.
thing. So from the outside, it's super hard to say. But then like from like more the inside of the Swiss scene, I do think that like I do think first of all even if of course also in Switzerland like budgets get cut and stuff, just the financial situation is very good even compared to Austria. Like there's a lot of calls and things you can apply. There's like quite a lot of foundations, so the general level of concerts in more of the marketing and the like outside appearance and maybe the staging is in a way more refined, I think, here. Then like I think in Austria I was to concerts where it's more like it's also fine because it's really about the music. It's just performers, they play the music. No one worries that there's not necessarily a nice lighting or stuff like that, you know? And then here you go to a concert and there needs to be really nice stage lighting. There should be some fog because it makes it more epic.
Yeah.
You know, if there's electronic music, there should be a good speaker system because it's Switzerland, they have the money. You know, like it's just a different like expectation on more of these like maybe also shallow, but more of these like practical things.
Yeah.
In a weird way that was actually I thought was quite cool when I came here. I was like and also just way more experimental. I felt like maybe it's because there's more money, but maybe it's also because there's different people.
Yeah.
I felt I was going to concerts a lot here, and I felt this also might be a specific band thing, I'm not sure, but almost every concert I go, I'm like, okay, maybe I necessarily it's not my style or I don't like it, but like it's definitely ambitious. Like maybe it's like on the more technological side. I heard some like it was a very nice like VR concert thing. You know, maybe it's more on the technological side, or it's more on like it's just the ambition of the production.
Yeah,
it's just higher here. For sure, the money is part of it, but it's also a different mindset. Like how I told you that the studies here teach you more about like how to market yourself, how to sell, or like how to make a career in the art music market thing. It's just much more like, it's in a way also more capitalist.
Yeah, much
than
more
in Austria,
career oriented.
much more like this. Where in Austria, I don't think anyone ever taught us about that. It's not the thing. It's like, no, you need to compose good music, then it will happen. And here it's like, actually it doesn't. But you need to do good stuff. But it's not only that. So just very different mindset, which I slowly came around to appreciate actually quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it has there's always the danger that it will become like fetishist, right?
Yeah, totally,
it's like only about the aesthetics. It's only about making things look good, like, and the content it's completely
like this happened totally. I was definitely in shows here where it's like this, but I was also definitely in shows where a lot of shows where I'm like, it's really the ambition. I think I don't know. I was really also in shows where I'm like, okay, this is actually it's not really working yet as a concert, but like I see they're trying to do something that is quite ambitious and that is like feels new, at least to them or the performers or the composers or creators, which in Austria are not necessarily always the case. In Austria it was more like, it's a nice concert, I like it a lot, let's go to the next concert. But it's not like, I can do this kind of thing, you know? And here I had way more of these experiences of like, okay. And even if it failed a bit, even if the thing was not amazing, I was still like, okay, they're really trying here to do stuff.
Yeah.
And I really wonder if that is, because I think it's a bit of a new thing also in Switzerland, and I wonder if this will create a more Swiss aesthetic identity, you know? If this will create more and more people that come from this scene, like Basel, Bern, also Zurich, and maybe also Geneva scene, that create more of a. I'm really wondering. Like,
interesting.
Because I can imagine, because I think it's very strong, and I think there are a lot of really interesting artists in Switzerland right now.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that will be the case or not. Because
Yeah.
then they will be like, no, actually I'm French.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. Like for me, it's really interesting. Like when I was in Austria, it really felt like a bit like guerrilla concert making, which was like on one hand like really cool. On the other hand,
here.
yeah,
like you still have this here, but it's more like the guerrilla concert making here is like, yes, you do, and in the end, of course, you don't get all the money you apply for, never.
Yeah.
But like it's guerrilla concert, but you apply for a lot of money.
Yes.
You know, and then maybe you get on a fraction, but you still have money.
Yes.
Which in Austria, is a like super independent underground thing. I'm saying.
But maybe to go back to the original question, we were I was asking not only about the like the music making and the concerts themselves, but also about the academic part of it.
Okay. And, true. You said about
and,
the studying.
And for me, it would be interesting that because like there's a lot of money going into
for sure,
music here.
For sure.
Is there an actual academic critique of where this money comes from?
Yeah, good question. I do. Well, first of all, I do think that like especially the music is always like also here. I think is slower to think about these things and critique about these things than like theater or writing, and probably also visual art. So I would 100% say that in these areas for sure, it's a very big topic. And in music, I experience this more rarely. I think a bit the mindset often is more, it's less like, we critique this and we are also, I mean, I'm not saying that people are not aware of like also hypocrisies and things like that and like where the money comes from. It's like big foundations and like there was the big Nestle fund that I think gave a lot of money. It's a super big company which actually stopped now, but there's of course, and people are aware, but I feel there a bit more. There's the mindset of, I meet more people that have the mindset that say like, okay, there is this money, let's make really the best out of it, what I want to do. Like, and then of course, if I'm like a politically minded person and I do a political piece and critique these things in the piece or whatever, yes, but I think a lot of people are also a bit like, no, but I don't want to do that. I believe in the art as also its own thing, and I just take what I get, and it's nice. I do think there is also a bit this mentality. I mean, if I'm very practical, like I think, for example, like Dakota did a piece where he was maybe the piece in Switzerland I heard it was the most like at least questioning, like because he was like there were different like hierarchy of like listeners and like questioning of like a bit more like you had to pay to get into the maybe nicer concert room where you had more experience and less experience. And for example, like I don't see so many pieces like that, music pieces in Switzerland. I do think there could be more of that, but I also sometimes do understand this feeling of like, okay, but like I do believe in the general intention of what I do, that maybe it's not like directly political, but it is political in a way. If you do a very crazy piece in a theater, I think, and also transform the theater or the art institutions itself, even if it's not necessarily like through like some political, like more activist art, but for like in I do think it's isn't just this thing of like trying to break institutions, and that is, I think, actually a very important part of more critique. It's not like necessarily critiquing directly, but it's like, okay, let's do a piece in the village, which also is a critique. It's not direct critique, but it is like a. So I think there's a lot of this in Switzerland, but it's maybe more a bit like not this. I didn't hear a lot of super like direct political pieces or anything. Always more like, maybe we can put more care onto parts of our society that is super underrepresented. This stuff, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I feel in general, like from the week so far that I've been here in Switzerland, it feels like it hasn't yet suffered from the disease of political division that we have now in the West.
Interesting.
Like
Interesting.
you look at all countries around Switzerland, they're super politically divided,
it's
right?
interesting.
And in Switzerland, it feels like they somehow managed to find like a balance that would allow the political parties, different as they are in ideology, to still work together.
Yeah.
Right? For example, the party there that is like the equivalent to the FPÖ or the AfD is, if I'm not mistaken, like in government working with the other parties.
Yeah. Yes, which I think. Yeah, but this is also probably a thing of I don't know enough about like the Swiss political system, but this is for sure a thing also about how the system works. That like they have to, and there's all the federal system that like just makes them work together a bit more. Like, so I do think it's also just like such a different setup of the political system that it leads to this. Yeah, interesting. I was thinking if this also applies to just like the people I know here or like in the music scene or whatever. Because I think the topic of like political correctness in art and music is very big in Switzerland in both ways, in the sense that like I do think in Switzerland there are very, very like it's a very, very important topic. Like I think a lot of foundations look for not necessarily like things that are politically correct, but like look for very like the things that fit in the whole context of decolonization, of like gender equality, all these things is like
to sum it up in one word, woke.
Yeah, of course. Like it's a super like trying to be woke country in the art scene, I would say.
Yeah.
With like sometimes like good effect, sometimes bad effect. I don't know. It depends always like on what then actually the artist what they are doing.
Of course.
It's really like there's no clear correlation.
Yeah.
But like, so this is a big thing. But then, on the other hand, I don't know. I don't experience like a lot of like dispute or discussion about that, which I do think is a big part of the, like if I think more of general society, at least in Germany, it's all like a big culture clash between like the people who are like, that like I think so much in the political system is actually just like cultural division between these different ideas, and there's a lot of course there's a lot of gradients, so it's difficult, but like I don't experience this so much here because I do think first of all here it's like this very safe bubble space also somehow.
Of course, they're also not part of the EU, so
like
they weren't.
There's like
no one forced them to accept immigrants.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
There's not this thing. Switzerland is surprisingly super used to having a lot of immigrants.
Yeah,
like the like more like historically speaking is actually very high. The number of like. It's for sure a big discussion, but I'm also as German not super part. I follow more like German politics than like Swiss politics. But like in more like the art and music scene, like of course there's like discussions about like different political like stances but like and I do think there's a lot of pieces and things that get like curated and produced that deal with like these topics. But then also I think I met so many people who really like it's like this mindset I said earlier really are like I did a piece about the glaciers, and of course it has there's like a green climate change aspect to it, of course, and it's part of a big exhibition about that, and that is definitely a very political thing. That is definitely very like it's a bit more like also a bit more I feel like let's save our glaciers. Like it's more a bit of a we really like our nature, like really it's less like let's save the whole world. It's more a bit like localized, like let's save our glaciers, which also you can criticize because like maybe it's not the most important thing to spend money on. But like it's not this like from the 90s, this very left anarchist thing is a very different thing. So that, but I did not write this piece because of that. I was like actually I ended up there in this exhibition, but like I started writing the piece about like very personal things. I don't know. So I do think there's quite a lot of people who I at least encountered here who really don't care too much about like the political landscape, which leads to good results because then they don't care too much about like what is expected from them to do. But then maybe leads also to the results that like, okay, but then maybe there's some stuff that artists here should do a bit more, which is like critiquing more like stuff like where's the money coming from, like what is the Swiss way of living, like
I'm not saying necessarily artists have to do that. No, exactly. It's just like I was asking if like if it's because like for me it's always like when there's like a lot of money coming from like thin air, it's like where is it coming from? Like, you know, it's like I'm very suspicious of that, but this is like a personal thing for me.
Of course, I totally understand that.
And of course, art doesn't have to be political. Like, I think this is also the danger there, because a lot of people use art as a political vehicle instead of like making art that is also political. Of course, I have no problem with political art, but once it's used as a political vehicle, then it's just like, it's not really art, in my opinion. It's just like,
I in my experience, it's just like this. There is, I do think, if I think of it more also about like theater. We visited like a great theater in Lausanne, Théâtre Vidi, which I think is very nicely run. Like, or the programmation looks cool. Like, it's really interesting. It's really exciting, I think, what they do. And I know they do a lot of shows that are very conscious, like you would call Vogue, but like are very conscious about like political matters, social matters, for sure. But then also, like, I don't know, we went there and watched a show about like, I don't know how many pianos playing on their own with like fire and stuff, like a basically circus thing. But I thought it was really good. Like it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's like the Philippe Ken is like a really amazing show that I thought was like a super well show about like it was about like a history of like horror shows in France in like the 19th century. Or
interesting.
Like, I'm messing it up a bit now, but like, you know, show that
sounds
like
fun.
Very different context and like super amazing. And they do this here too, these shows. Like, so it doesn't have to be necessarily about the topic that is right now in the trend, for good reasons or bad reasons. But like, I do think that I do feel that here there is like quite a nice. It's just like, like I said, again, like the ambition and like kind of seriousness of like, you know, there's a bit of the French thing of like, we want to be like elitist thing. We want to do the best shows, and we program just really good artists, and they get money, and which is a slightly elitist thing that I called French now. And then there is the German thing of like, but the artists should be free and they need to talk about the political thing, and you know. And I do think there's a bit of a mix, which is not so
it creates like an interesting balance between the two.
Yeah, maybe.
Interesting.
That theory I just came up now. But maybe it's true. I'm not sure. Yes.
Cool. So someone needs to research this.
Yes.
If someone is listening and is interested in this topic, please do the research.
Yes.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So what should we drink to? The last sip.
The Alpenraum.
To the Alpenraum.
This is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Should really go somewhere that is not German speaking.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You don't know, you should challenge yourself.
Yeah, maybe France, maybe Francais.
Maybe South America.
That would be actually quite a big challenge, I think. That is something I had a very, very good friend who was doing his PhD there. That is actually something that feels, it would be super amazing. I met a lot of Argentinian people here, and they're crazy. They're all really interesting artists. So I think there's a crazy scene there.
Yeah. I mean, Argentina has to be an interesting country. Their president is fucking Javier Milei. Like, if that's the president, the country has to be like a super interesting place.
So I do think because of that, I would be interested in Argentina. Yeah, but I just don't know enough. I mean, because right now I was like in Japan and Hong Kong, and I want to go back there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the world is a big place.
Exactly. Antarctica.
Ooh, you'll be the first Antarctic composer.
Ooh, nice. Nice.
Cool. So, Severin Dornier.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So nice.
Was fun.
Yes. Yeah. Super fun.
Cool.
First one with the cat.
This is actually the first.
So it's the first trio.
This is the first trio. Yeah. Kiki, do you have like any last notes for us? Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope the microphone has picked it up because it was like a very important.
So you're gonna say, I hope the microphone translated well. Need to put subtitles.
Yes, cat subtitles.
Nice.
Nice. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
much.
watching.
Yes.
See you next time.
Me.
Goodbye.
Ciao. Ciao.